Hello, welcome everyone. We're all aware that the millennial generation has to witness and go through quite a lot. We have had 9/11 nearly 20 years ago, the global financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still happening today, climate change, just to name a few. And social media booms have made it easier for everyone to connect, but yet create so many new pressures just so to keep up. Some people have commented that due to the pandemic, they've been held back for 2 years from pursuing their goals and dreams. Now, we're all living in this situation, and for leaders, it makes it particularly challenging. And I have here with me Jürgen Klopp, many of you will be familiar, from Liverpool, and Bill Winters, CEO from Stan Chart. Thanks for joining us. And we all know that leadership is important, good leadership is important. Perhaps I could ask you, and maybe Jürgen first, and then Bill, and then myself to chip in one sentence, how would you define good leadership? Jürgen.
Sorry, I cannot do that in one sentence, but I can do it pretty quick. Good leadership is for me, you have to be a good listener, because only if you listen or watch, you know what kind of group you have to lead. And that's the first step. If you don't do that, if you don't only lead without knowing who you are leading, you will fail. Maybe not in short term, but in long term.
Thank you. How about Bill? How would you define good leadership in one or slightly more sentences?
Well, if I had to put it into a sentence, I'll put it into 2 words, which is curiosity and empathy. And I must say, I've spoken with Jürgen about this before, and I had a sense of those two words, and I think that's something I aspire to. But when I hear Jürgen talk about leadership, I feel those 2 words coming through. Maybe not maybe that's not the way he would express it, but I feel those coming through, and I frankly feel very reinforced by that. But yeah, curiosity and empathy, I think, are the 2 characteristics of a key leader.
That's pretty much what I said in better words. Much smarter.
Well, I find it difficult to squeeze it into one sentence, but I would say that for a good leader, obviously you have people who follow you, and the question is, why would people follow you? And I guess it's the ability to engender trust, and how do you then enable that trust to be earned and gained? I think mainly 2 things. One, values, who you are as a person, as some of you have shared, to listen, to be curious. But another part of it is to provide a sense of direction and purpose, sense-making amidst a very complex world. So good leadership, I think, ultimately really is the ability to gain trust through your values and also the ability to provide clarity and purpose. But I think we're all pretty much in the same ballpark. And clearly the pandemic, I think, has brought forth a lot of different challenges from leadership. I guess we also need to deal with issues like, for example, mental health, right? So for Jürgen, obviously mental health is a topic that's in society and certainly in the world of sports as well. And physical fitness, it has an impact as well because of not only just a pandemic, but the restrictions in place. How do you both, I guess, personally, and how does your team deal with the expectations and pressures amidst this environment?
Wow. So first and foremost, I'm really happy to say that it's that we are in a much better part of the pandemic now. I know it's still existing, but I speak now only from our area here, from where I'm in the moment at the training ground. Life is much more normal than it used to be. So we can do what we love. That's the big plus in our business, that we came all into it because we love what we do. That might not be in all businesses exactly like that. Very often in life, people have to do the work they have to do to earn the money, to earn a living. And so we do what we do with a lot of passion, naturally. Means in the moment when we arrive here and things feel normal, we are in a good place. We're in a good place. On top of that, apart from a lot of testing and all these kind of things, we have now supporters back in the stadium. Hopefully it will stay like this. And then we have the feedback as well again. Before that, without supporters, it was like, performing in an empty room. It's completely different. So, but did we have issues over the time? Yes, we had, but we could sort that just by talks, just by showing perspectives. But mainly is, I think, responsible for mental health is then the private social environment, like the family and the close friends. We do what we can do, but we are not together for 24 hours. So we try to encourage the boys to tell us what kind of issues they face, and then we sort them. We don't do that pre-active too much, to be honest. We offer just a really natural, warm environment where we feel very comfortable. That's the idea behind it.
Thanks, Jürgen. But for Bill, I mean, from Stanchard's perspective, you have a massive global footprint. And in Singapore alone, for example, 10,000 staff in Singapore. So how do you then deal with all these different issues? How do you build, sustain, and I guess the most difficult of all, change culture, especially amidst the prevailing conditions?
Yeah, Trenton, I think the way you characterize the issue is absolutely correct. It's been a really, really challenging year for 2 years for all of us, for me, our colleagues, clients, but it's very different from location to location. Obviously, some people were dealing with overwhelming health issues. Others were dealing with the nature of the various lockdowns that we experienced. To come up with a single recipe for all that, and obviously people are coming from different cultures with different professional and personal challenges as well. So we tried to go back to really your first question around leadership. What is a leader? And I'm not talking about just from a few of us at the top of an organizational diagram, but really leadership throughout the organization. And it does come down to, I think, again, that this number one is empathy, just understanding, making the effort to understand and show that you understand the challenges that people are going through, and evidencing that continuously, and then responding as best you can. So we've introduced some I think pretty progressive hybrid working arrangements. I think everybody's going the same direction. We'll all experiment. We'll find that things work and things fail, or things are less than optimal, and then we'll adjust. But just one example of the ways that we've tried to respond in this environment. But looking at it more broadly, I think organizations can move through some difficult times if they really feel like they're operating with a common purpose. And we identified our purpose probably de facto 150 years ago as driving commerce and prosperity. And we tried to do that through what we call our unique diversity, which really reflects the nature of that global footprint that you mentioned up front. And that what we found through this pandemic is that having a common purpose it helps people to stay connected to the organization, which also gives them an extension of their own personal purpose. And what it's manifests itself in a lot of ways. We were very quick off the bat to put financing facilities in place for people that were helping to fight the pandemic. Employees raised a $50 million fund that went to the hardest hit areas, which we've now largely dispersed. But obviously, it carries on, and it carries on today in different ways into the approach that we take to sustainability, for example, which I think our colleagues are really proud that we're a thought leader in that space and an action leader. And that sense of purpose, I think, helps pull people through.
I think sense of purpose is really important. I mean, one of the questions that we have to address is, as you start out, what are the advice you provide them? For example, for first-time founders, next generation entrepreneurs, my own sense is exactly that. Having a clear sense of purpose. I mean, we're very good at jumping to details, doing this, doing that, but sometimes taking that step back to have that clarity of purpose is really important. And I guess for entrepreneurs, really, is just take that leap and really to start trying. So for Jürgen, from your perspective, if you imagine yourself, right, giving advice to your younger self, just as you were starting in a football career or a career as a manager, what advice would you provide him?
I got that question asked a couple of times, and I said, don't worry would be the advice I give the young version of myself, because who could have known that my life would turn in such a exciting one. That was not clear when I started in the business. So that's it. But I think you asked for something else. It's just, and what I did would be, so leaded me to the point where I am now. And that's obviously not a bad one in the football business. I know that. Be, again, curious, be ambitious, be busy, be full of desire of what you are doing, and then you can make it. Unfortunately, in life, there are no guarantees. The only thing, so it means to give you absolutely all doesn't give you any kind of guarantee to get anything, but it's the only way I know anyway. So that's how it is, and that's what you have to try, and that's what I did. I remember very often when my early stages as a manager, I was so incredibly busy. I can't believe how I did it. So I watched more football games than the day had hours. So that's how it felt from time to time. And in my business, that's obviously really important. Imagine I would have invested that time in something really good, so like in medicine or something. But in my case, it was football. So yeah, keep yourself on your toes, get all the information you can get, make all the experiences you can make, the good ones and the bad ones, deal with them, take them, get up again, and all these kind of things. So then life can be really a good one. In my situation, I know you can fail without your own doing. I know that, but again, the only chance to achieve something is to give your absolute everything.
Indeed, I think the future is exciting. I think the key thing is just to embark and really try our best and do it as much as we can. And for the new generation, I think many of them would expect business to move beyond just a profit agenda. Companies must also have purpose, play a role to serve the well-being of society, harness technology, and fulfill sustainability responsibilities. So for Bill, how would you leverage technology to overcome potential trade-offs between purpose and profit?
I mean, technology has been an enormous enabler, probably throughout human history, as a practical matter. But it feels like it's as impactful now as ever. So I've like many of us, participated actively in the whole COP26 process, and there's a lot of focus on some of the old world steps that we can take to improve the prospect of this catastrophic temperature change. Meaning planting trees and protecting the trees that are there, other changes, basic changes to lifestyle, all of which are highly relevant. But there is an incremental way out of this as well, which is to develop the technologies that are fundamentally different in terms of both how we could reduce our emissions today, but also how we could actually get some of these emissions back out of the atmosphere and safely stored underground. And when I think about the consequences of getting this one wrong, which I think are almost unimaginable in a lot of ways, leveraging technology in a very determined way could be a very important increment in this fight against this terrible challenge. But it really only works if we give the proper incentives for the investments in that technology. And I'm always a little bit shocked by how much of the thoughtfulness goes into things like the latest video sharing app or something that helps you find a date on Friday night. Both important, but not going into the things that could have such a profound impact in our society. So I think the public-private sector need to work together to get that technology investment to the right place, because we know it can be transformational.
So we have a sense from technology and how, in the business world, how it operates. From my perspective, in the public space, I would say technology plays a critical role in uplifting society, especially those who are marginalized or disadvantaged. Because with technology such as access to smart devices, even children from more disadvantaged background can have access to information that's out there. I think equipping them with the physical devices, but also equipping them with the understanding and how to use it. I think that's a great leveler in many ways, and I think we need to work that through the education system, I think through the various ways to sort of reduce inequality. But so from a football perspective, Jürgen, how do you see technology playing a role in football? Apart from VAR, right, which we all have views about, but so how do you think technology plays a significant role in football?
Because you as a good example, as technology is not always a step forward. At least when it's still handled by human beings, then it's I don't know exactly what that would be then, human technology or something like that. Yeah, of course we use it, and over the years it's got more and more, but it's still, and I like that. I said it only a couple of days ago. It feels like it was yesterday when I was the youngest coach in Germany, and now when we play a star football, I'm the oldest man on the pitch. That's really horrible that things like this go that quick. Inside, nothing changed. Outside, everything changed pretty much, and that's the situation. When I started, the main thing we have to do to learn about football is watching games back, and not only the own games. And of course, that was a different technology with DVD, or still, I'm not sure how do you call it, video cassette, like really rewinding forward, all this kind of stuff. That was horrible, took really long. We are much further than that. We use it, of course, in sports science a lot, much more. Thank God for all the players of this generation, because my generation, we got killed in training for no sense. It was absolutely, didn't make us better, didn't make us more resistant, but it was state of the art at that time. I remember we had to take salt tablets when in the summer before training, and we're not allowed to drink during training. Imagine that was state of the art in sports science that day. And today we drink after every 3 minutes pretty much in training. That's probably a bit too much, but it's that's the difference. So we use science a lot. And with that, then technology comes in. The boys have obviously their GPS stuff around that. We know how much to run, stuff like this. In the good old times, we had to judge that with our eyes. I still do that, but get on top of that more information. We know everything about everybody. And in the end, it's still the same game. And that's I like in football. But I know the world changes around us. And I think there's one point where we should really put the finger in, but because that's something else which changed in the last 30 years a lot. That's the climate. And if we think about that, then for our generation, it's obviously still okay. We have now a bit hotter summers and stuff like this, but we should not forget we are not the last generation, and there are others coming up, and it's not only the next one, there are others after that. So I think that's a massive, massive thing. Whatever knowledge we get over the next few years, we should put in that area, because, yeah, I think it should not stop with us or with the next generation. There's a lot to come and a lot to develop and involve in all these kind of things, and hopefully we have the place for that here on this wonderful planet.
Thanks, Jürgen. Actually, I think as a sort of closing question, I thought of asking this to Jürgen as well. I was recently at the Tokyo Olympics, and there is some controversy. Some folks felt that whether the Olympics should continue because of the COVID-19 situation. But I remember when I was speaking to my counterparts over there, and I told them that this was Japan's gift to the world, to host the games, where sports has this electrifying effect on people, where you rally people, you inspire through victories, through defeats, and you see people rallying around together. And then sports has that effect. So from Jürgen's perspective, I mean, you are very much involved in football, but what's your perspective in terms of how football, sports really contributes to our overall well-being amidst this sort of COVID-19 situation? Every day we're looking at numbers, infections, but sports, I think, has an uplifting effect. Any thoughts on that as a closing question?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. I think if life would be only work, then we all would, nobody could really enjoy it. So then you do what you have to do. But you need this kind of moments where you can just let your thoughts fly and be part of something different, maybe sometimes something bigger. I think that especially the Liverpool family is all over the world. I'm not sure about exactly how many supporters we have. The numbers around about 300 million. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but I could imagine. So because there's no country anymore where I could go without people recognizing me. That was much easier when I was a Dortmund coach, by the way. And this is already a big club. And so it's something we can really enjoy together, and that's it, together. You don't feel alone when you are part of a football team like Liverpool FC. Then sometimes you have to suffer, but very often, thank God, in the last few years, we had really moments where we could celebrate together without being together. And that's something what gives each life a lift. So I feel a bit sorry for people who are not interested in football, to be honest, because they don't have that moments. But hopefully they get that from other parts, from music, from whatever, arts. But in football, it's my best way to come together, to be honest, with the whole world, enjoy life, and be focused for 95 minutes only on a football game, because that's allowed. After that, you have the normal problems back, the usual problems back. But in these 95 minutes, it's allowed to dig in, focus, love it, feel it, and celebrate it.
Thank you. And one final last question to wrap for Bill. What parting words would you have for the delegation who's gathered here to, in terms of, from your experience in business as a senior leader, what words of advice would you give to young entrepreneurs, young leaders? What would be, in a very short couple of sentences, what would be your parting thoughts be?
Yeah, right. The most direct advice I could get is to be enthusiastic. Whatever idea you got, whether it's the latest fintech idea or a partnership idea or supporting something else, just be enthusiastic about it, because that positivism will rub off on the people you work with. It'll rub off on the people that you want to partner with or that you want to sell to, because you have the ideas, right? Our listeners here today, they have the ideas. They have they're looking for maybe some sponsorship or some money, but be enthusiastic about it and show it.
Sure. So I guess what we gathered from here today, for one, Jürgen from the world of football and sports, Bill from the world of finance and in the private sector, for myself in government, clearly the key thing is let's be curious. We can all learn from each other. There's a tremendous amount of learning to do, and technology affords us that as well. But I think the key thing is be curious, be enthusiastic, and just keep going and keep trying. So, I mean, while the world is, well, it's not melting down around us, but it's complex, it's difficult, but I think we seize initiative and just go forward as best as we can. So, Bill and Jürgen, thanks very much for joining me here. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.